exorcism, apocalypse, righteousness, dogma. Certain churchy words have the power to make us sit up straight and maybe shiver a little. The word today is salvation. But how did salvation, the central event of remembrance for the Jewish people, the remembrance of being brought out of captivity in Egypt to the promised land, how did salvation, which for Jesus so often was accompanied by physical healing, healing from blindness or leprosy, healing from paralysis or possession, how did salvation become so shiver-producing? Well, it could be words like we heard today in today's gospel. Could be wailing and gnashing of teeth added on top of rushing crowds through narrow doors. But this is Jesus we're talking about. So we can take a deep breath. And we can remember that the gospel itself is part of Jesus' saving plan. And when it confronts us on this 21st Sunday of Ordinary Time in the year 2022, we might just need to sit up straight and shiver a little. Because there's no getting around it. Jesus is in a prophetic mood, and he has a warning for us. It's a strange question that the man asks. He doesn't ask, am I going to be saved? It's not about him. It appears that he's interested in a kind of math problem. Maybe he's interested in the ratio between salvation and damnation. But it really doesn't matter because Jesus doesn't answer the question anyway. In Jesus' fashion, he just gives an answer. And the answer is strive. Jesus says strive. But strive can also be a very tricky word. When I was working as a hospital chaplain, I remember being called to visit a young man. His father had come in with a massive catastrophic stroke, and he was on life support. And the young man was struggling with removing life support. He was worried about his father's salvation. And at the end of our visit, he said to me, well, it's not like I'm a Catholic or anything, and I think you can just pray yourself to heaven. Now, putting aside his misinformation, he was on to something. He recognized that striving, at least in a modern, individualized sense, doesn't leave room for God's grace and mercy and healing and love. Where does God's action fit in to striving, to this kind of striving? I feel certain that Jesus didn't consider striving in this way, this sort of modern, individualistic way. All we have to do is recall the text, recall the gospel passage. Striving in the gospel has something, and maybe even everything, to do with being known and recognized by Jesus. Striving is our deep desire. It's what deep desire looks like. Deep desire to be in relationship with the living God. Striving increasingly puts us in the right place to hear and see and respond to God's intimate gaze, to be known. Striving is how we practice prayer. It's how we practice walking through life with our eyes and ears open to the wonder and beauty and majesty of creation, and also open to the places where injustice and suffering have the upper hand. The thing about striving, we'll call it gospel striving. The thing about striving is that it admits to our unfinishedness. It leaves room, plenty of good room for God's healing, saving grace. And gospel striving always gives a gift. The other side of striving, gospel striving, is finding oneself in Christ. Finding oneself, even for just a moment or two, able to say with St. Paul, I live now, no longer I, but Christ lives in me. It is for sure a paradox. Striving only to find oneself resting in God. The God who brought the Israelites out of Egypt, the God who raised Jesus from the dead, the God who promises to do the same for us until the kingdom comes.